Thank you for joining us. Welcome back. Now, we are joined by Kelley Boss, who is the host of Tech File and our tech reporter right here on KTN. And he's going to be talking to us more about startups and why they thrive in Kenya and why even the Kenyan market. So therefore, Kelley, take it away.
Thank you very much, Kelvin. And of course, you can watch Tech File on Wednesday at 8:30 p.m. But today I'm going to focus on tech startups and why they thrive in Kenya. And first of all, just to mention, Kenya is known as the Silicon Savannah. And the reason why this is because of the guys that came first, because they built this community of young guys who are innovators. And through that, it has an enabling environment and a vibrant crop of talent. And for starters, I'll have to go through a chronology of how this was enabled from what came first and enabled so many other people to, be able to start up. And I'll start with M-Pesa because this launched in 2007. And when it launched, before then, it was very hard for maybe a person with small financial strength to have maybe a bank account. But this brought in financial inclusion, and this brought in a whole new level of tech revolution because you could invent anything, and B2B, business to business and business to consumer were enabled. And this, sorry to say, just before we move to the next one, for Safaricom, I think this is the reason why my next slider of accelerators is because there is the difference between Kenya and many other countries in Africa and maybe outside was M-Pesa. And before we had M-Pesa in Kenya, there were Visa payments in maybe in some other parts of the world, which looked like it was the fastest. But when M-Pesa launched, this was a revolution. And then moving on from M-Pesa, something came up in 2010, which were, accelerators. And in 2010, iHub launched. And when iHub launched, it was some space where, innovators and tech heads would go, connect, interact. And the people there in the tech hubs were people who would maybe connect your businesses to the outside world. Right now in Kenya is nearly 200 such hubs. Primarily in Nairobi, but most of them also in Eldoret, Nakuru, Kisumu, and the coast. These spaces help in co-working. It is very hard to have a startup and build and pay for an office. So this is a co-working environment where you can, set up your laptop anywhere and start dealing. So developers work there most of the time, and these are the people who innovate things. And this also you get to meet people. In these hubs is where you meet, people who will mentor you and train you, and eventually these are the people who will give you access to finance. And then after 2010, moving on in Kenya, I think investors, through now having hubs, and hubs build trust because it's a space where everybody is here, where someone started, and you also have access. So this enabled investors to, come in Kenya and see Kenya as a gap to take in terms of, investing and accelerating these innovations. And just to mention something about investors, these are the types of investments: grants, angel investments, pre-seed debt, and all this. But something that came up this year is while Google launched its Black Founders Fund, it announced and you could apply from anywhere in Africa and Europe. And after it announced the fresh second cohort of people who were successful in this application, 3 of Kenya's startups were successful. So that means that just shows the strength of Kenyan startups and building a startup in Kenya and just the environment. And of course, a favorable ecosystem. We just launched 5G, one of the fastest countries in Africa to launch 5G. Not the first, but one of the fastest. And Safaricom has a really good deal on that. And of course, digital literacy. And this will also, I'll marry this to the posture that the country is taking, because you can see that one of the first meetings that the president took was a meeting with the M-Pesa guys. And then there was a Google event in Kenya, and he attended. Just the other day, he was at the Connect Summit. And there's so much about the posture of Kenya. In a way, even the ambassador from America to Kenya, Meg, is from the Silicon Valley. So that really shows how much good we are at attracting startups in Kenya. And just to conclude this conversation, Kev, the advantages that maybe Kenya and Africa at large has in creating this environment of a thriving startup is we have a really young population, and this young population means a good pool of talents. And also, apart from a young population, perhaps maybe Africa has not really penetrated its tech ability, and that means there is so much to innovate right now. Kev.
Right, thank you so much, Kelley Boss, right there, just giving us an insight of the penetration